It's been 60 years since Patsy Cline's tragic death, but shocking new revelations suggest her end may not have been as simple as we thought. What if Patsy's life was filled with secrets and powerful enemies, pushing her toward that fateful flight? While the world saw her as a beloved country star, those closest to her knew a different story, one that may hold the real reason behind her untimely death. Was Patsy's final flight really an accident, or did someone want her gone? Patsy Cline's voice and presence captivated audiences from the moment she stepped onto the stage. To the public, she was the sweetheart of country music, an unshakable icon who could effortlessly deliver heartfelt ballads that touched millions. From her breakout with Walkin After Midnight to unforgettable hits like Crazy and I Fall to Pieces, Patsy defined what it meant to be a star. But the story of her success wasn't as glamorous as it seemed. Beneath the spotlight, Patsy's life was filled with struggles, personal challenges, and, as some insiders now hint, dangerous secrets that may have been her undoing. Patsy's rise to fame wasn't easy, and her journey through the music industry wasn't without its sacrifices. Born in 1932 in Winchester, Virginia, she grew up in a working-class family and faced hardship from an early age. Singing was Patsy's way out, but even after years of small gigs, her journey to stardom was met with countless obstacles. She fought her way into the male-dominated country music world, winning over audiences and industry insiders with her voice and charisma. But success didn't just bring fame, it brought pressure, expectations, and an increasing level of scrutiny on her personal life. Those close to Patsy knew her as a woman of fierce independence, someone who was unafraid to speak her mind and challenge norms. In an era where women in music were expected to play by the rules, Patsy did things her own way, but that independence came with consequences. Industry insiders revealed that Patsy's defiance created tension, especially among those who held power in Nashville. Executives saw her as both a rising star and a challenge to the status quo. Despite her success, Patsy was reportedly under immense pressure to conform, to be a good girl, and not rock the boat. But Patsy wasn't one to simply follow orders. As her fame grew, so did the tension around her public image. She was known for her strong personality, her wit, and her unwillingness to hide who she truly was. She wasn't just a singer, she was a trailblazer, and that didn't sit well with everyone. Insiders say there were whispers of frustration from certain industry figures who saw her as unpredictable, even rebellious. Some felt she was pushing boundaries too far, threatening the traditional image they wanted for their rising star. Others speculated she was getting too big for her boots, making enemies in places most artists would fear to tread. As Patsy's career soared, her personal life became increasingly complicated. Friends and family have shared that she was battling not only professional pressures, but personal conflicts as well. Those who knew her best hinted at private struggles, from her relationships to her finances, adding layers of stress that only intensified her complex life. Behind the powerful voice and confident persona, Patsy was dealing with a reality few knew about. The cost of her independence was high, and she was beginning to feel its weight. Patsy may have been America's sweetheart on the surface, but her life was filled with secrets. As her career reached new heights, it's clear that she was stepping on toes and challenging the established order, making her a beloved figure to her fans, but a thorn in the side of certain insiders. Little did anyone know, this combination of fame, defiance, and secrets would soon lead her down a path to that final fateful flight. While Patsy Cline may have seemed like a picture-perfect country star, her private life was far more complicated, and the rumors surrounding her love life were no exception. For years, whispers about Patsy's relationships swirled through Nashville, hinting at romantic entanglements that went beyond her marriage. Some say these relationships brought her comfort during times of intense pressure, while others suggest they entangled her in a web of secrets and potential dangers. But one thing is clear, the lines between her personal and professional life were more blurred than fans ever realized. Patsy married Gerald Klein in 1953, but the union was rocky from the start. The two were often at odds over her career ambitions, with Gerald reportedly wanting her to stay home and take on a traditional role. Patsy, however, was determined to make her mark in the music world, even if it meant clashing with the expectations of those closest to her. The couple eventually divorced, and in 1957, Patsy married Charlie Dick, a man who would later be described as both a great love and a source of turbulence in her life. Charlie Dick was known as a spirited and sometimes volatile figure, and their marriage was far from smooth. Their relationship was marked by passion, but also arguments, and even rumored infidelities on both sides. Patsy's friends and colleagues have since hinted that the singer may have had close connections beyond her marriage, connections that made waves in her personal life, and may have stirred up jealousy and resentment. While these rumors were never publicly confirmed, they continue to add a layer of intrigue to Patsy's story. painting a picture of a woman caught between love, loyalty, and the demands of her high-profile life. Some insiders suggest that these relationships put Patsy in difficult situations with powerful men in Nashville's tight-knit music community. As her star continued to rise, so did the whispers of connections with certain industry figures who were both influential and controversial. According to sources close to the scene, Patsy was known to be friendly with key players who could help her career, but this closeness may have also led to personal complications. Was she seeking stability in an uncertain world, or were these relationships a means of survival in a male-dominated industry? These personal entanglements may have brought Patsy some relief from the pressures of fame, but they also added layers of complexity to her life. Some who knew her claimed that Patsy was warned to be careful, warned that certain relationships could create lasting enemies. Jealousy, rivalry, and fierce competition within the industry were not unusual, and those who rose quickly were often viewed as threats. Could Patsy's connections have stirred up animosity in ways she didn't foresee? Did her relationships with powerful insiders place her in harm's way? As Patsy continued her career, the risks associated with her personal choices became clearer. She was navigating dangerous waters, blending personal relationships with professional ambitions, and reportedly stepping on some powerful toes along the way. Those close to her believed that at times, Patsy felt trapped between her love for the people around her and her drive to succeed. But the stakes were high, and as we'll soon see, Patsy may have had reason to believe her private life wasn't just complicated, it was downright dangerous. Patsy Cline's fierce independence and bold personality made her a standout in Nashville, but it also made her a target. While her fans adored her, her determination to chart her own path put her at odds with powerful figures in the country music industry. Unlike other artists who might have accepted the industry's demands without question, Patsy wasn't afraid to push back. She wasn't interested in conforming to the mold Nashville executives wanted for her. And as her popularity grew, so did the tension between her and some of the most influential people in the business. By the late 1950s, Patsy was one of Nashville's brightest stars, but she faced mounting pressure to follow a carefully crafted image that industry leaders had designed. The Nashville sound was the dominant trend at the time. Smooth, polished, and highly controlled. But Patsy had a rawness to her that couldn't be easily packaged. She had a deep, soulful voice and a strong, assertive personality that made her stand out. She wanted to sing her way, with her own creative input, even if that meant clashing with those who held the reins of power. Rumors began to circulate that Patsy was causing too much trouble by challenging decisions, speaking up for herself, and even for other artists. This defiance didn't sit well with Nashville's elite. Some insiders suggest that certain executives grew frustrated with Patsy's refusal to play by their rules, viewing her as a problem who might influence others to follow her rebellious example. Others saw her as a rising star whose influence could threaten their control over the industry. They were used to artists who stayed in line, and Patsy's independence was setting a precedent that made them uncomfortable. Patsy's strong will and refusal to compromise extended to her contracts, her choice of songs, and her relationships within the industry. She wanted respect and wasn't afraid to ask for it, a rarity at the time. Those close to her say she even fought for fairer treatment of musicians and crew members, challenging Nashville's power structure in ways that few dared. For Patsy, it was about maintaining her integrity, but for certain industry insiders, it was a direct challenge to their authority. Speculation arose that Patsy had begun to make enemies, and whispers circulated that she'd been warned to watch her step. Friends later recalled that Patsy seemed aware of the risks, but felt she couldn't be true to herself without speaking up. Did these conflicts create resentment strong enough for someone to see her as a threat? Some believe she became a target, viewed as someone who couldn't be easily controlled. If she continued to push back, was it possible that these power players would stop at nothing to protect their influence? As Patsy's career surged forward, so did the opposition from those who wanted her to stay in line. What she may not have realized, however, was just how high the stakes really were. Her defiance set her apart, but in a world as tightly controlled as Nashville, stepping out of line could come with unforeseen consequences. And soon, these tensions would lead her into an even more dangerous situation. While Patsy Cline's music career was thriving, her personal finances told a different story, one that was fraught with challenges and hidden pressures. For many artists of her time, fame didn't always equate to financial security, and Patsy was no exception. Despite her string of hits and growing popularity, she faced financial troubles that left her vulnerable and, some say, even desperate. Rumors have since emerged that these money problems led her into hidden deals and questionable relationships with powerful figures who might not have had her best interests at heart. Patsy's financial struggles weren't just about mismanagement or personal spending habits. They reflected a larger issue within the industry. Many Nashville executives controlled their artists' earnings, taking large cuts and leaving the stars themselves with only a fraction of the profits. Patsy, who had fought hard to achieve her success, was left with limited control over her own finances. And as her expenses grew, with children to support and an increasing demand to maintain her image, she began feeling the financial strain. Some close to Patsy claimed that these financial pressures made her more reliant on industry power players, leading her to make decisions she otherwise might not have considered. There were rumors that she entered into business arrangements with influential figures who promised financial support in exchange for favors. But these weren't just ordinary business deals. Certain insiders suggest that Patsy was locked into these arrangements, leaving her with little room to negotiate or pull away if she wanted to. For Patsy, this may have been a lifeline to keep her career afloat, but it also meant she was now deeply entangled with people who held significant leverage over her. These hidden deals reportedly took a toll on Patsy, especially as she tried to balance her independence with her financial needs. Some speculate that she began to feel trapped, torn between staying true to herself and fulfilling the expectations of those who controlled her income. She wasn't just dealing with executives. She was dealing with individuals who wielded real power in Nashville. This dynamic created an environment where, according to rumors, Patsy was urged to play by their rules or risk serious consequences. There's even speculation that some of Patsy's choices put her in the crosshairs of certain industry players who didn't take kindly to her outspoken nature. She was no longer just a rising star. She was an asset, one they didn't want to lose control over. And as her debts mounted and her dependency on these powerful figures grew, the possibility of cutting ties became more difficult. Those close to her say Patsy grew increasingly anxious about her financial situation, and some recall her expressing fears about what might happen if she tried to break free from these arrangements. Patsy's financial troubles weren't just a personal setback. They were part of a larger web of control and power within the industry. While she continued to shine in the public eye, behind closed doors, she was grappling with the weight of these hidden deals. For Patsy, financial freedom remained just out of reach, and some believe these pressures ultimately led her to that fateful flight, one last attempt to escape a life where powerful forces seemed determined to keep her trapped. As Patsy Cline's life became more complicated, a chilling aspect of her final days emerged. She began expressing an eerie sense of foreboding, a feeling that something dark was looming. Friends and colleagues close to Patsy recall her making statements about feeling a bad end was near, almost as if she knew her time was running out. Some called it intuition, others superstition, but one thing was clear: Patsy believed she wouldn't live long. And as she continued to climb in fame and navigate a web of powerful figures, it seemed that she had reasons to be concerned. Patsy's premonitions were no passing thought. In the months leading up to her tragic end, she openly shared her fears with those she trusted, telling fellow musicians that she felt a sense of danger. These revelations came across as more than just nervous musings. Close friends say she was haunted by the idea that her life would be cut short, describing her growing anxiety as uncharacteristic for the typically bold and fearless singer. One friend even remembers Patsy saying, "I don't think I'm gonna be around much longer." Was she just overwhelmed by the pressures around her, or did she sense a real threat? Adding to this eerie premonition were the warnings Patsy reportedly received from others in the industry. Friends and insiders hint that she was advised to be careful and stay out of certain affairs, advice she may not have fully heeded. Patsy's willingness to confront people in power, combined with her refusal to conform, had created tension. But now it seemed these tensions were becoming dangerous. Those close to her say she felt she was on thin ice with certain people who didn't appreciate her challenging the Nashville establishment, and that her outspokenness might have made her a target. Speculation even arose that Patsy's growing concerns led her to consider stepping back from the spotlight entirely, hoping to avoid any potential backlash. But as a performer, she was torn between her fears and her commitment to her fans and career. Patsy was known for her dedication to her audience, and retreating from the stage was a sacrifice she wasn't ready to make, even if it meant facing whatever danger she sensed. The intensity of her premonitions, combined with the warnings from those around her, gave an ominous weight to her final days. Friends later recalled that Patsy seemed to be carrying a heavy burden, one they only fully understood after her tragic death. Was Patsy simply worried about her career, or was there something more evil behind her sense of impending doom? Did she feel cornered, or was there someone actively pushing her toward an early end? As the date of her fateful flight approached, Patsy's fears continued to mount, leaving her loved ones with haunting questions they still ask to this day. The warnings were there, and Patsy seemed to know her life was in jeopardy. But the mystery remains. Why did she get on that plane? On March 5th, 1963, Patsy Klein boarded a small plane in Kansas City, Missouri, bound for her home in Nashville. She had just performed at a benefit concert, and despite the terrible weather conditions and her own hesitations, she decided to make the journey. Friends and family were stunned, especially given the ominous warnings and premonitions she had shared. Some even urged her to wait for safer travel options. But Patsy, determined to return home, took the risk. Tragically, that decision would be her last. Questions linger around why Patsy chose to board that plane, especially considering her anxiety about her safety in the months prior. Those close to her recall that she'd voiced doubts about traveling, with some even suggesting she felt pushed into going. Some speculate that industry pressures may have played a role. Patsy's dedication to her career was unwavering, and she may have felt an obligation to keep up her commitments despite the risks. But did someone encourage her to fly that night? Knowing the dangers, was this flight simply a tragic accident, or were there deeper motives at play? The details of her final flight only add to the mystery. The weather that night was terrible. Thick fog, heavy rain, and low visibility created hazardous conditions. Yet, Patsy and the other passengers boarded the small aircraft, piloted by her manager, Randy Hughes. Witnesses later reported that the flight was turbulent from the start, with the plane struggling against fierce winds. Just 90 miles from Nashville, the plane went down, killing everyone on board instantly. For many fans, the circumstances surrounding Patsy's final moments remain a haunting enigma. Rumors began to circulate almost immediately after her death, with some speculating that Patsy was urged to take that flight. Despite the clear dangers, a few insiders even suggested that there were individuals who benefited from her sudden passing, people who perhaps wanted her out of the picture. While no concrete evidence supports these theories, they persist to this day, fueled by Patsy's own ominous warnings and the tense relationships she maintained within the industry. Fans and friends can't help but wonder, did Patsy sense a threat, and was this flight part of a larger scheme? The tragic crash marked the end of one of country music's brightest stars, leaving behind a legacy that would inspire generations. But with Patsy's passing, so too did many of her secrets and the unanswered questions surrounding her life. Was her death truly an accident, or was there more to her story? A side that some wanted to keep hidden forever. To this day, the mystery of why she boarded that flight, despite everything, keeps fans wondering. Patsy's tragic end left her loved ones searching for answers, with her premonitions and fears casting a shadow over her final journey. Whether it was fate, circumstance, or something more evil, one thing remains certain: Patsy Cline's death will always carry questions that may never be fully answered.